What's up guys, I'm Seth here with Cognito Moto. I'm going to show you how to lace a wheel using one of our conversion hubs. Alright, today I'm going to be lacing up a 17-inch sun rim to one of our conversion hubs here. I've got my bearings and the spacer. Alright, so when you get your rim in the mail, it's going to come packaged similar to this. You'll have your spokes in a little envelope right here in the middle of the rim. Set that aside. Alright, so in here you're going to have your spokes. You got two different kinds here. You got short ones and you got your long ones. Nipples and the grease. Alright, like I said, we got a 17-inch sun rim here, anodized black. I like to tape up our rims before I lace it up, just to make sure I don't get any scratches here on the inside rim. You just use some basic blue masking tape. You run the tape right here on the inside edge. Make sure you don't cover up these holes. Alright, flip it over. Do the same thing on this side. Alright, and this process is the same for all of our front end conversion hubs. Our rears are a little bit different. So you got your short spokes here. It's just this part past the bend. It's going to be a little bit shorter. And then on these guys here, just a little bit longer. Keep those separated, don't mix them up. And then you're going to lay these guys out and stand each of them up so that we can drop in the grease. Alright, and it really only takes a drop of this grease. If you use too much, it'll bleed through to the other side. It'll get all over the inside of your rim. All right, now that you've got your nipples greased up, we can move on to placing the spokes. And this really just makes sure that nothing seizes up later on down the road. If you have to tighten or loosen anything, it'll all go smoothly. I'm going to start off with the long spokes here. Take about half of them. And you're just going to place one every other hole. You want to make sure you don't scratch that bottom end as you place it through there. All right, and you're going to take your short spokes. Grab about half of these guys and just throw them in on the other holes. All right, and you're going to pick the hub up. Make sure all of these get seated in the hole. I'll have to spin them around. And then get them all to lay flat. Flip it over. I like to spread them out, just makes it easier. You don't get tangled up. And then take your long spokes again. And you're gonna find where the long spoke is on the bottom. So we got one right here, you can see it's moving more in the short spoke. And you're gonna go up and to the right. Just like that. So you got a long spoke here, and a long spoke down to the left. And again, skip a hole, throw one in. Do the same thing with this side, pick it up. Make sure they're all seated right. You're gonna lay them all flat. And then separate them all out again. Make it easier to get the pattern situated. All right, so now you're gonna find your long spoke. Again, you can just kind of shake it around, figure out where it is. Here's one here. You're gonna run that underneath of this short spec that's to the left of it. Take this long. You're gonna run a short spec over top of that. So you kind of end up with this pattern. You got your 2 long specs going this way and your 2 short specs going this way. If this gets confusing, you can take a small piece of tape, run it right here over these 2 specs, and it just kind of keeps this pattern in formation as you continue. All right, now you're gonna do the same thing on the bottom. You got a long spec right here. It's gonna run over top of the short one to the left of it. Same thing here. And then you can see your 2 long spokes on the bottom are going in the same direction as the 2 long spokes on the top. It's the same pattern, just reflected down. And then you're gonna lay those spokes right on top of it. Move over here. You got 2 short spokes now. Take your long one to the right of them and just run it under it. On the bottom, long spoke, right over top of those short spokes. All right, and then you finish up right here. Now as you can see, you have the same pattern with these groups of 4 spokes going all the way around the hub. All right, now that you've got your spokes laid out correctly, we're gonna start working on attaching the hub to your rim here. There you go. All right, so it's really important you figure out which way you're putting the rim on. As you can see, the way the holes are drilled here, they're kind of in groups of 2. You have a center line that goes through the rim here. These 2 are gonna be closer to the center line, then the next 2 are gonna be further away. Continues all the way around, closer, center line, further away, closer, further. So you're gonna find your 2 that are closer right here. And as you can see on your hub, you have, within a group of 4 spokes, you have 2 that are on the inside. These are your long spokes. They're gonna be lining up with these 2 inside holes. And then your short spokes that are on the outside are gonna line up with your outside holes. So, your long spokes here that are on the inside are going this direction. You want that to line up with the inside holes here. These right now are also facing the right way. If you put a nipple in here, you can see it's gonna go in the same direction as those spokes. All right, so now that you've got your rim oriented in the right direction, you're gonna throw it on top here. Make sure your spokes don't scratch it up, even though we got tape on it. Might still hit a spot. Now you're gonna come down to the side. You're gonna find those 2 holes that are going in the same direction as the long spokes. Twist it around. And then line up those long spokes. And take a nipple and thread it on. And now you can just start working your way around the rim. Make sure the holes are going in the right direction as the spokes, so those line up. You'll know pretty quick if something isn't right. Spokes won't line up with the holes correctly, or they'll get tangled up and you might have to start bending the spoke. That's when you know you've done something wrong. You might have to backtrack a little bit. All right, now that you've laced up the wheel, we can get these bearings in it. We recommend getting the bearings in with the press. Just make sure that you don't scratch anything or damage your wheel. Avoid using a hammer if possible. And lay down a rag. We use foam bags. Just make sure you don't scratch it on the metal here. All right, you're going to take some grease and put it on the inside of the hub here. Doesn't take a whole lot. That much. Just put it around the edges. And these bearings are fork specific. We cut these spacers here. You can use the OEM one if you want to. And then slowly jack it down, making sure you don't hit the outside edge of the hub. And then you can feel when it stops. You don't want to push down too hard on it. Make sure it's in there snug. Careful taking it out. Flip it over. Same thing on this side. And you're going to drop your spacer in here. All right, now we can start tightening up the spokes. All right, now we're gonna take the wheel here and put it up on our cheering stand. You can really use any cheering stand. We use Bike Master. Doesn't matter a whole lot. Again, be careful you don't scratch anything getting it on here. Tighten it down. You don't need to make it too tight, just snug enough to where it won't rattle around. All right, now you're gonna tighten up the spokes. And you're just gonna tighten it so it doesn't show any thread on the end of the spoke. Just like that. And then you're gonna do that all the way around the rim. And this just makes sure that they're all tightened to the exact same point. So when you start bringing them in, it'll keep the wheel as true as possible so you get a good start. Now we're gonna start slowly bringing these in, only a couple turns at a time, maybe 4 or 5. And I like to start right here where the valve hole is, so that way you know when you've made the full rotation around. So as you bring them in, you're gonna start out within a group of 4. You're gonna start with this first one. After you tighten that maybe 4 or 5 turns, move on to the next first one in that group. Again, the first one in this group. And after you do full rotation of that, you're gonna start with the second one, skip 3, second one, so on. All right, so now I've done 5 rotations on each spoke. Still some wiggle room, so I'm gonna go ahead and do 3 more rotations. Again, skipping each 4th spoke. As it comes closer in, some of them might not even get 4 rotations. This one's only getting 2. So now for these ones, I'm only gonna do 2 rotations. All right, so now that a majority of these are tightened up, I'm just gonna run through and tighten the rest of them. And it's still kind of off, but that gives us a good place to start at. All right, so now we're gonna get it true using a dial indicator on a magnetic base. And you wanna get this thing lined up right on the outside edge on the side. Just like that. Turn the magnet on. And give it a spin. Now you want this dial to be at most maybe 5 to 8 notches off. So we're gonna go out to the outside edge, tap the wheel this way, and you can see that's the way it needs to go for it to be true. So because it needs to go this way, we're gonna tighten these spokes here on the right, and that'll pull it in that direction. And I use a 6mm wrench for these spokes. You don't want to tighten it too much right now, so we're gonna go back through and torque it after this. All right, so now that it's relatively true, we're gonna go ahead and take a torque wrench and tighten all of these up. All right, so now I've got my torque wrench here, and I'm just gonna run through all of the spokes until the torque wrench clicks. That's how I know I'm making sure all of this is tightened up. And again, I'm gonna start where the valve hole is and do every 4th spoke, just until it clicks. All right, so now that they're all torqued down, we're gonna go through and true it one more time. And if you see the dial skipping like that, it's just because it's hitting that sticker on the side. Bumps it out a little bit. So that's probably good for the side to side. Now we're going to want to check from the bottom. Same concept, just line it up right on the outside edge. And now you're just going to be bringing either the wheel in or out. Try not to go out if you don't have to, unless the spokes are just way too tight. So on this edge here, that's where it needs to come in at. And we're just going to tighten all of the spokes in that area. All right, now we'll check the side one more time. All right, looks good on the dial, so we're gonna take that off. And you can go ahead and take off the tape. And you can take the wheel off the stand. And the last thing we'll do is take these seals and put them right on top of the bearings. You might need to take a little of this grease, same grease we used on the bearings, run it on the edge of the seal. And then just push the seal in with your thumbs. Wipe off the excess grease. And do the same on the other side. Alright guys, that's how we lace and true our wheels with our front end conversion hubs. I hope this information is useful. The process can be pretty tedious, but after a few runs I'm pretty sure it'll be straightforward for you guys. Thanks for watching. Guys, if y'all thought this video is useful, press the thumbs up and subscribe below.